Good day. Welcome to the Corey Morgan Show. Halfway through summer. Where the heck did it go? It's vanished in a blaze of heat, forest fires, smoke, and finger pointing. But yeah, we're getting into August now and already going to start counting down the days till the leaves start falling. So that's, I like heat. I know a lot of people don't. But please don't complain about the heat, guys. There's going to be so much time where you're going to be thigh deep in snow, and then I'll be complaining about it myself. Either way, we got lots going on. Lots of people are on vacation. Lots of things are happening, but the news sure hasn't stopped over the course of this summer. It's been crazy all around the world. It's been crazy domestically. We'll cover a whole bunch of that in this show. I'm also going to chat with Colin Craig of secondstreet.org. They put out a documentary on healthcare reform that is just packed with common sense and, talking about actually fixing the thing rather than just highlighting the shortcomings. I think we can do that easily enough, but some solutions would be nice. And Colin's going to talk about that. All right, but yeah, let's get to what the title of this was, and I'm sure it's going to get some people wound up, but that's what I'm about. I like winding people up. You can always send your love or hate my way through email or on the comments and so on. And yes, we're going to talk about the Kamloops ever ongoing, years now, residential school burials. So, last week, Joseph Quinnell wrote a column in the Western Standard, and he was asking folks to stop referring to the alleged burial of children at the Kamloops Residential School site as a hoax. And I've got nothing but respect for Joseph. He's been an excellent voice on Indigenous policies in Canada, and I don't doubt he's going to continue to be. In this case, though, I guess like the old saying goes, with all due respect, I can't disagree more strongly with him. Perpetuating a hoax is far more damaging to Indigenous Canadians and the rest of us than appearing insensitive and calling it as it is. Canada was turned upside down by the revelation that as many as 215 children had been killed and secretly buried in apple orchard at the site of the Kamloops Residential School. Flags were put at half-mast for nearly 6 months. Churches were burned to the ground, and apologies flew along with checks. Now, we're over 3 years later, and nothing has been done to verify the claims. The Kamloops Band was given nearly $8 million tax dollars to follow up on the issue, yet they appear to have done little to nothing with it. They won't disclose where the money went, and the myth of the hundreds of graves at the site continues, along with the associated pain and social damage caused by people who really believe hundreds of children were murdered and buried at that site. Look, the RCMP clearly don't believe any bodies are on the site. While there's been no end to the misinformation and excuses made as to why there hasn't been any excavations, the reality is the RCMP has full authority to dig if they really believe it's a crime scene. The allegations made that children were forced to bury their compatriots in the orchard as recently as the 1960s means, theoretically, the perpetrators could still be out there if indeed these incidents really happen. The site isn't a separate nation, and the band doesn't have the ability to stop a murder investigation. If that was the case, Native reserves could start quite the cottage industry as a site for murderers to bury their victims with the knowledge that the investigation would stop there. The reason the RCMP won't follow up is that there's no evidence that a crime took place. They don't think there's any bodies there. Some folks are claiming the burials are sacred and must not be disturbed. To be blunt, that's a load of crap. Those same folks are insisting that tens of millions of dollars should be spent in Winnipeg to try and locate the bodies of a couple of murdered Indigenous women suspected to be buried in a landfill there. So is it sacred to recover these remains and return them to the family, or is it sacred to leave them in the spot? It's whatever's convenient for these activists, and it's getting tiresome. The issue of returning the remains to the families causes a conundrum to the folks perpetuating the hoax as well. Not only have there been no bodies found, there's no children reported missing at the school. While hundreds of children allegedly were buried in the orchard, apparently every one of them was an orphan. No parents, no siblings or cousins have reported kids missing. Even if a body was found, who would we return it to? More effort has been made to deter the investigation of these alleged burials than has been made to get to the truth. And these are the hallmarks of a hoax. Instead of proving people who question the narrative wrong through forensic investigation of the supposed burial sites, efforts have been made to illegalize the questions. People are asking for the truth, who are asking for the truth, are being labeled as deniers, and the government's been considering illegalizing denialism. Nobody's denying that residential schools existed, and most people agree the schools were not pleasant places. It's not unreasonable, though, to ask for evidence when the claim is made that hundreds of children were secretly killed and buried. However, finding the truth at the Kamloops Residential School, it wouldn't be that expensive or complicated. It would take nothing more than a day or two with some people using shovels. If indeed bodies were found, then work could begin to find out who they are and to hold people responsible and to return the remains, of course, to where they can be found. Let's face it, though, and let's say it out loud. The reason the Kamloops Band won't dig is they know there aren't any bodies there. The gravy train would dry up. While no children disappeared at the site, 8 million tax dollars did. In this case, things may be moving beyond calling the affair a hoax and actually moving into fraud territory. I don't care if folks think it's insensitive to call the alleged Kamloops child burials a hoax. More people should be calling it a hoax. In fact, they should be shouting it from the rooftops until a real investigation happens. Canada's Indigenous population is socially challenged and angry enough as it is. Allowing myths of murdered children to continue is only fostering more division and making things worse for everybody. The truth needs to be exposed. If you don't like it, dig a hole and prove me wrong. Until then, I'm going to call it a hoax. And with every day that investigations are delayed, I'm more and more confident I'm correct. Well, that's what's got me wound up today. Let's see what else is happening out in the big bad world. And in the news, I'm sure I'll be stirred up and pissed off about as well. We got our news editor, Dave Naylor, in studio to give us a rundown on this week's news. How's it go, Dave?
Good, Corey. I'd just like to say ditto. Great rant.
Oh, thanks.
Great rant. Where has the summer gone? Holy cow. August already?
Blasted by.
Yeah, as you say, a couple of weeks till the leaves change, and bang, that's it. You know, I was a bit jealous of you last week or so when there was a video that you put out. You know, every week when we were children, my parents would pack up my sister and I, and they would take us, try and lose us in the mountains around Banff and Jasper.
Yes.
You know, wander through the
looking for
the
gingerbread
hills.
houses.
Yeah, stuff like that. And they were always upset because we'd always beat them back to the car, and they couldn't get away. And we you know, through the years we've seen lots of wildlife, from grizzly bears to, you know, the elk and all that sort of good stuff. Two things I haven't seen: a wolverine and a cougar. And you've got like a whole pack of those cougars wandering by your place. I mean, holy cow.
A trio. And I still haven't seen them with my own eyes, just our game cameras. It shows how shy those things are. But yeah, 3 of them went walking behind my house a couple of weeks ago together. I mean, I've never seen them in a pack. I mean, they're scary enough to think of as one, but 3 of them.
That's kind of freak Jane out at night, eh?
A little bit. She doesn't go into the woods at night, though, so that, you know, it tends to be safe. It's just our idiot dogs that run back there. So far, they're still kicking.
Hopefully Duke the Wonder Dog doesn't do anything stupid. I mean, I'd rather take on a bear than a cougar.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think of a cougar, you think of a house cat that is this big and can rip your arms to shreds and jump that high. Now, just, you know, imagine that the size of a cougar.
I mean, they're dead before you even know they're there.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's go on to something cheery. The news.
Yes.
And holy cow, another busy week. So busy, I haven't even had time to shave. I don't know about you, Corey. I like lighthouses. They're pretty to look at. They're great, historic. So the Coast Guard announced today they're shutting down 2 of them in BC, basically because they're about to fall into the ocean. So they're shutting down these 2 historic lighthouses there. Got a nice exclusive on Phoebe, beautiful Calgary German Shepherd who was over in the Olympics being a bomb sniffer. And her handler from the Calgary Police Service doing diligent work over there in Paris. More on the fallout of the Jasper wildfires. You know, all the stories are coming out now that the feds had years to prepare. They knew it was coming, but despite that, they still lost 358 buildings in that wildfire. So obviously, more and more questions will be asked. A little bit of a joke for you, Corey. You won't find funny, but and neither will taxpayers. Canadian government spent $600,000 on a 4-day stand-up fest in Montreal. This was to replace the defunct Just for Laughs festival, and hey, they thought it was worth sticking $600,000 worth of our money into that. Huge day, evening from the Middle East. Israel had a double whammy, so to speak, today. They wiped out the head of Hamas in a assassination in Tehran. Earlier, they had killed a senior Hezbollah leader in Beirut, proving their military correct, that these were dead men walking. Pierre Poilievre, CBC gave him another excuse today to defend them. One of their chief correspondents based in Europe was mourning the loss of the Hamas leader. Our Dave Makachuk's got an interesting column. You'll remember the Olympic massacre in 1972 of the Israeli athletes. The head of Israel at the time, a lady called Golda Meir, unleashed what they're calling what they called the wrath of God. And they systematically hunted down anywhere in the world and killed anybody involved in that Israeli massacre in the Olympics. And that's just what they've done now in the Middle East after the killings. And speaking of unrest, lots of fallout in Southport, Scotland. A massive riot overnight injured more than 50 cops. all came about after mistaken internet reports that the person who broke into the daycare and killed the 3 little girls was a migrant. That fueled riots, and police vehicles were burned, a mosque was attacked, and just ugly scenes over there, Corey.
Yeah, no, levels and levels of tragedy in that one. It's just been a bad circumstance all around. Nothing horrifies people more than children being killed.
No, those little girls didn't deserve this. It's just horrific.
No, well, just keep reporting on things and hoping somehow eventually the world evolves into some sort of civilized state and sanity. And
yeah,
maybe
we've got Canada doing quite well at the Olympics, and
there we go.
We got another 2 weeks of that to keep us.
There are some distractions we can watch and relax and lighten up a bit sometimes too.
Yep, go Canada, go.
Right on. All right. Thanks, Dave. I'll let you get back into that newsroom, all hairy and overworked there, and keep reporting that news for us.
See you at the pipeline later tonight.
You bet. Right on. Thanks, Dave. That is our news editor, Dave Naylor. I'd say, yes, lots going on. Sadly, a lot of it is bad news, rough news, harsh news, but we got to cover it. We got to keep up with it. And we do report on the other things. We have lots of stories. The site is loaded with stories. We're one of the most prolific news organizations in Canada these days, actually. And the reason we are, this is when I put that out there, guys, is because of you, because of subscribers. We stay independent. We aren't paid by the government to do this. We're accountable to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, guys, get on there. It's $9.99 a month, $100 for a year. And you get past that paywall, and it supports people like Dave and Jen and Sean and just so many folks working here at the Western Standard, Jonathan up there, getting those stories out to you. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet, get on there. And if you have already, hey, I really, really appreciate it. Spread the word for us. Jordan commenting, no man has ever been killed by a cougar. I think if we look back, there have been a couple cases in BC over the years and maybe something in California. But the point made, though, is that it's extremely, extremely rare. And if they do, typically cougars, actually, if they attack humans, are usually children and women. So, yes, they go for the smaller. It's just their nature as hunters. They're frightening animals. But in reality, I mean, when I show those pictures on my game cam all the time, they're all over the place in Pritis, yet attacks on people virtually never happen. And when you think there's thousands of cougars out there, thousands and thousands of people going into the woods every day, and they aren't getting attacked, as scary as those animals are, you shouldn't lose too much sleep over them, because typically they're just not into eating folks. Yeah, lots of other stuff on the go, talking about those riots in England, and it reflects some of the tension going on in the world and everywhere. A number of factors are coming together there. It shows the problems with a mob, right? When the government or people don't feel that the government is protecting them enough, if they aren't doing justice, then citizens stand up and they will take care of it themselves. But unfortunately, citizens aren't necessarily controlled. They aren't necessarily nuanced, and they won't necessarily target the right people. Europe, England, and it's happening, is growing in Canada, but it's more acute over there. Paris, actually, when they aren't holding the Olympics. There's been a lot of immigration. There's been a lot of difficulty with integration of many of the new citizens coming in. And hey, again, if we're going to be talking blunt speaking today, mostly it's typically Islamic people. They tend to be introverted. They tend to have more problematic people come out of their population that have difficulty integrating than others. We just, for example, had 2 charges laid in Toronto against people who suspected of planning terrorism, and you look at the names, and sure enough, they are Islamic folks. It's not saying all Islamic folks are terrorists. That's where we start getting into the mistake. Most of them by far are not, but somehow with that faith, you get more difficulty than other areas. So when that horrible murder happened of children, everybody was horrified. The mobs came out and they went to attack a mosque. Now, it was just based on internet rumors. It doesn't sound like this had anything to do with Islam, but once the mob was hyped up, things went badly. Officers hurt, police dogs hurt, damage done, and of course the community is more divided than ever. So we've got to address the issues. We've got to address integration. We've got to address how we're getting along, or the mobs will take over, and it'll be a heck of a lot uglier than a controlled way of dealing with having new people in nations and having them integrate and get along. Okay, let's get to our guest there, Colin Craig of secondstreet.org, because they put out a documentary recently, and it's fantastic, actually, especially if you're concerned about healthcare. So welcome back to the show, Colin. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Corey.
So I guess just to run it down in a nutshell, I think it was just a little over 40 minutes. You've made a documentary talking about, Canada's healthcare system, some of the problems holding it up. Ideology is, of course, a big one of them, but also proposing solutions. I guess what are the main points and takeaways from that production?
Yeah, so you're right. At 40 minutes, there's a lot in it. We, of course, start off with the problem, just showing people a very important point, and that is that money is not the solution. We've been doing that, trying that for decades now. It doesn't matter if you talk about conservative governments, liberal, NDP, people always try and politicize this. Governments across the political spectrum in different parts of the country, federal level, provincial level, they've all tried throwing money at the system and crossing their fingers and hoping for something to work out. And yet the results just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And, one of the other points we make right off the hop is that we've got a lot of good people working in the system. They're trying hard. They're nurses, doctors. They got into healthcare because they want to help patients. So we got a lot of money in the system. We got a lot of decent people. The problem is the structure itself is just not delivering good results compared with other universal healthcare systems. And we explain that too, to show that Canada's not the only country with a universal healthcare system. France, Sweden, Norway, Japan, there's Australia, there's lots of other countries around the world that do what Canadians like. And that's the idea that everyone in the country is covered. You're not going to face a big bill when you walk out after having a heart procedure or hip operation or whatever. So there's lots of other countries that do what we want to do, and they're doing it much better than us. So the bulk of the video looks at some of the things they're doing differently. And we go through about 5 different policy options that we could embrace here in Canada and then start to see better results like what we're quite often seeing in Europe.
Yeah, and to start right off, that's where we get some confusion. We get some defenders of the status quo, a couple of things. For one, they like to pretend that Canada and the United States are the only systems on earth, and that's absolutely untrue. But the biggest fear people have, I think the principle that most people share, they want a universal system. They want to make sure everybody's covered no matter what. You're not going to get turned away from a hospital or bankrupted because you got injured or you were diagnosed with cancer or a disease that required a lot of treatment. But if you can make people comfortable that they're going to have universal coverage, we shouldn't be afraid then in examining ways on how to provide the care while maintaining the coverage.
But exactly. And, I think when you talk to patients about what they want, like you said, they want that universal nature. They want everyone to be covered. They want to make sure people aren't getting a huge bill like we hear about in the US when they leave. So that's one. They want quality treatment and they want it in a timely manner. I would say that those are the top 3 things that Canadian patients really want. And if that's your goal as a nation, we can start to look at other models like Sweden and France and Australia and Japan and other countries, because they're doing those types of they're meeting those objectives. They're doing it better than us. And a big thing that a lot of countries do differently is there's not as much ideology in healthcare like you find in Canada. There's always this great debate. Oh, we can't do private because of this. And what I'm referring to is, having maybe your surgery in a private clinic and the government's paying for you to get it. People raise all these concerns. And what we note is that, in other countries, they don't always have that type of friction. They think about, well, what's best for the patient? Who can we as the government partner with to get the patient the best care possible? I think that's how often they look at it. Doesn't matter if it's maybe a government facility or a nonprofit or a for-profit. They're less ideological, and that is good for patients if governments are willing to fund whoever it is to provide care in a cost-effective manner, a safe manner, a way that ultimately benefits patients. And, we see some of this in Canada already. Family doctors are private businesses. You go in, you meet with your family doctor, you leave, and then when you're done, that doctor's office will bill the government. So we already have that. Sometimes x-rays, blood tests, those will be done in private facilities, but people don't even know it. So it's the idea is to maybe expand and do some other services to surgeries and other health procedures, and then we could get some better bang for our buck. One of the other things, Corey, that we talk about in the documentary is sort of changing how governments fund healthcare. So right now, quite often what they do is they will cut a big check to a hospital and say, good luck. Here at Foothills Hospital in Calgary, here's $200 million or whatever it is. We hope you can help a lot of patients this year. And that's not a very effective way of funding healthcare. So what they often do in other nations, we were just in France and they do it there, is they will fund health facilities every time they help a patient. So they have a formula to say, okay, for a knee replacement, we're going to spend, say, whatever it is, $10,000. So now that facility has the incentive to try and do a lot of knee surgeries, because then every time they do it, they're going to get more money. We don't have that incentive right now in our healthcare system. Governments have a budget, and every time a patient comes in, the budget gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then at the end of the year, the facilities often go, well, sorry, you're going to have to wait till next year. We don't have any money to do more knee surgeries. So it's not very effective the way that we do it. Changing that incentive model is one way that, another way rather, that we can get better bang for our buck in the healthcare system.
Well, and if we could get over our hangups, get over the ideology, and allow people to shop around, aside from changing the model to make it better for a hospital, if a hospital is overwhelmed, or if it turns out that a patient can get service, this is something that's happening in Europe, and I believe you pointed out, they can go to a country next door, get this comparable service done, and have it paid for by the system through that. Because the bottom line is, if the state's paying for the procedure, it doesn't really matter where it's getting done, as long as it gets done in a reasonable manner and efficiently. It opens a lot of doors for people to examine different ways to get the job done.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we talk about in the documentary too. So if you live in the EU, you can go to another EU country. If you're facing a long wait time locally for, let's say, cataract surgery, you can go to another EU country, pay for that cataract surgery, and then get reimbursed by your home country. The reimbursement goes up to what that home country would spend locally. So, that protects them from just having to write blank checks. It's just a way of getting treatment to their patients faster. And obviously, traveling for surgery is not for everyone. That's obvious. But some people, they will do it. And when that happens, if you're on a waiting list and someone ahead of you in line decides to go somewhere else for treatment and you don't want to do that, well, then you get to move up a spot. So it benefits everyone.
Well, that's it. And what people don't seem to be realizing as well, I mean, our issue isn't funding. As you said, we spend enough. We spend a lot. It's access. I mean, it doesn't matter how much we spend. It doesn't matter how great, and we do have great health professionals. If you can't get to them in a timely manner, it's terrible, and it costs the economy when people are waiting for care.
The consequences are huge. You're right. It costs people lost income sometimes when they can't work because they're waiting for a hip operation or whatever, some other problem to get resolved. It can lead to depression. When people have to sit on the sidelines of life, they're dealing with chronic pain. We've talked to patients that have told us they've had very dark thoughts. You can look at addiction too, as people are popping painkillers for a year. I mean, these painkillers aren't meant to be popped for a year straight. They're typically meant for short periods of time until you can get surgery. But here in Canada, so often we just let people pop painkillers for a year or two, and it's very highly unethical. The other major consequence, of course, is death. Some people are dying because the government isn't getting them the care they need in time, and that is appalling. It's not acceptable in a developed nation like ours. So we desperately need to be looking at health reform options to get patients the care they need.
So one of the other, when it was debated a lot when we talk about, say, having private facilities providing services, things like that, even if we can prove that, it would keep the doctors here. Some people say, well, then the people paying to jump the line will take up all of the time of the professionals, and these private facilities will take all of the best and brightest, and people in the public system will be left with the dregs and second-rate care. How would that not happen? What would prevent that from happening then?
Well, if we think about the endpoint, I think we have to ask a question. How is it that Sweden can make that work, where patients have a choice between the public system or private options if they want to pay privately? And in Sweden, by the way, most people use the public system. It's something like 85%. About 15% have private health insurance, and they will use private treatment options. But most people still rely on the public system, and Sweden has found a way to get that done. France, another great example. The French have that option too. Australia, I mean, around the world, people have figured it out. So we know it can be done. And when your viewers are hearing this claim from people that don't want health reform, they don't want choice, they say the sky will fall, I would urge them to think, well, wait a second. why would those people be saying that when we know it can be done in other countries? Either they're defeatists or they have some kind of ulterior motive. And, in many cases, they have a monopoly. They have complete control. They don't want anyone challenging their control. So they come up with all this fear mongering. In some countries, what they will do is they will have caps. They will say to doctors, you can only, you work in the public system and you can only work so much privately. And then that way they make sure there's, enough capacity in the public system. In France, what they do is they use what we were talking about before. That's paying health facilities by procedure. They call it activity-based funding. So it doesn't matter if a patient chooses to go to a private facility or a public one or whatever, the government's going to pay for that procedure at a rate of X, whatever the procedure is and how much they've figured out they're going to pay. So there's definitely different ways that you can do it. I think it's an important consideration if you're going to be giving patients choices to make sure that there is that capacity in the public system, but also giving patients options. And one thing I think to keep in mind is that we will so often ration access to care in Canada. So that means ultimately that if you're a surgeon, your income potential may only be this much, because that's as much as the government is willing to fund for you to do, say, knee surgeries each year. And often these knee surgeons have time on their hands. They'll be twiddling their thumbs because they can only do so much. That's all the government's going to let them do. Well, if you give them the option of working privately too, then they might be able to supplement their income and make more. So if they're earning this much, they might be thinking, well, I'm going to move to the US because I can make this much. But if in Canada we give them that opportunity to supplement their income in the private sector, then they can earn more here and maybe they stay here instead of leaving our country. So I think you might actually see the opposite. When you give healthcare workers more options and ways to make money, then more people are going to decide to stay in Canada.
And I believe the French model is a lot like that. They have private hospitals and it's regulated. It's got to be whatever, 60 or 70% has to be in the public system. But the other 30%, hey, use those hallways, use those specialists, however you will, charge whatever you think you can. And that way the doctor can buy his yacht through the people who want to pay extra, perhaps from other countries bringing money in. You keep the specialist there and the public can get that top level doctor as opposed to potentially losing them in a public system when we're in an international market. I mean, there's a lot of countries that'll reach out and get a hold of that cardiac surgeon or that orthopedic surgeon or that oncologist. I mean, we have to get pragmatic here.
Oh, for sure. We were in France. Like I said, we were in France just a couple of weeks ago. We walked through a private hospital. We walked through a government-run hospital that was actually run pretty well. And that's because of the activity-based funding. They changed the incentive model in terms of how that hospital receives money. So they were starting to do all kinds of innovative things. We walked into a large room where there were all these patients, and it was a room for them to wake up in after they've had surgery and their anesthetic wears off. And there were no walls in this room. You could see quite a large room, and there were all these patients, maybe 5 or 7 or something like that. And I said, oh, this is interesting. There's no walls. And the person at the hospital said, well, it's more effective this way. If you're a healthcare worker, you can keep your eyes on more patients instead of having to go from room to room to room to room. And it's more effective. It was more cost effective too. So, that changed because the government changed the incentive model. So you start to see more innovation, more good ideas coming from the grassroots up. So yeah, there's a lot of ways where we can learn from these European countries and find ways to deliver healthcare more cost effectively. Last year, we went to Sweden. We walked through and met with people that were running a government-owned hospital. So the government owned the hospital, but it was a private company that managed it. And that private company was able to deliver health services, same quality, but for a lower cost, somewhere between 15 and 30% lower, depending on the calculation and different people's understandings of what's going on. But yeah, I mean, we should be taking overall a less ideological approach to healthcare. Like I say, partner with whoever can help patients, because I think patients at the end of the day, they just want that quality care in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you guys have taken that on and you've laid it out really well in the documentary. Just good common sense discussion so that maybe, people can just shed some of the ingrained prejudices or things that they were kind of trained to think the Canadian system is, and just start looking at maybe we can do things better. So before I let you go, I mean, of course, where are you going to find this documentary when folks sit down to watch it?
Yeah, so people can watch it for free if they go to healthreformnow.ca. That's the name of the documentary, Health Reform Now. So they can watch it at that website. They can go on our Twitter feed, or Facebook feed, or YouTube feed. We've got it posted everywhere, but the easiest way is healthreformnow.ca.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, Colin, for putting it together. And like I said, I watched it. It's a good watch. I didn't have to force myself through it. It's good and informative. And I really do strongly recommend folks get out there, give it a watch when you got 40 minutes free, or break it up. That's the great thing with stuff on demand and streaming. I appreciate you guys putting that together and having you come on to explain it to us today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Corey. I always enjoy the chat.
All right. I'm sure we'll talk again soon, Colin.
Take care.
So again, folks, check it out. Save that, healthreform.now, or as he said, secondstreet.org. They've put a lot into this documentary. They're sharing it everywhere. They want you to get out and watch it. Get out and watch it. Share it. We got to change the way people think about these things. The problem, so many problems, but one of the things he's been pointing out is a monopoly. Now, here's where the left and the right can kind of both be correct sometimes in pointing out when the citizen, the consumer, the person at the bottom is getting screwed. And it's almost always a monopoly situation. But we got to remember, a government monopoly will screw you, so will a private monopoly. So what's the solution? Break the monopolies, competition, get other options, have things in there. You're no better off. It doesn't matter who's got the monopoly. If there is one standing over you, you aren't going to have a good time. When it's something as important as healthcare, it's no wonder we're getting horrific service, because there's only one manager, only one provider. They've got no incentive to improve. They've got incentives to avoid headaches. They got incentives to keep the unions happy. They've got things like that, but they don't look out to you, because it's not procedure-based service. It's not looking to pay the bills through their services and goods or whatever. It's a monopoly. So think of things that way. A monopoly is a terrible place to be in as a consumer. And you just can't do any better. We've got to break it up. Speaking of which, speaking of governments and how inefficient they are, for people who watch Calgary news and things out here, the Green Line, I just like ranting about that one, because this is a beauty. This is an LRT, light rail transit expansion. They've been talking about it for like 16, 17 years in Calgary now. It's on and on and on. Nothing's getting done. They've done a bunch of ripping up stuff downtown. They're doing some underground utility work, apparently. But what the government does, so the city of Calgary managed to get billions out of the federal government and the provincial government. Of course, they get billions of the Calgarian taxpayers, and spent a decade on this thing. Still not an inch of track laid yet. I believe they spent $1.5 billion so far. The other levels of government basically said, we've given you enough. We're done. Make do. So what have they done? They keep shrinking it. It's like I said, it's like a pecker in a cold swimming pool. This thing is shriveling up so fast. Every time they give a new report on it, it gets shorter. The price doesn't get any lower. It's up to $6 billion now. And this thing is barely going to go outside of downtown. No private business could run that way for 16 years. Shareholders, others would fire them. They would pull out. The business would go broke. But when it's government, they can just keep going and going and going. And you get hooped. So what we're going to have one day is a grossly over budget project that goes from downtown Calgary into a part of town that doesn't have many people in it. And who knows when it's going to get done. And we've got to start rethinking our urban design anyways. Downtowns, who goes downtown anymore? I mean, people still do, but it's not like it used to be. Calgary has a massive downtown vacancy problem going on right now, and most downtown urban centers do. One of the consequences of COVID that people discovered is a lot of people discovered I don't have to go to the office every day. A lot of those businesses realized we don't need the staff in here every day. A lot of them can work remotely, and they have, and they've stayed that way. Now we got the government workers who are staying that way, but they aren't actually working. They're just sitting around home playing Minecraft, but that's a separate story. All the same, we have a surplus of office space. These aren't growing areas. We're trying to figure out how to fill them. Adding more train service into these centers isn't the way to go. We should be planning our cities understanding and realizing that people don't need to come into these dense urban cores anymore. They can live outside. So let's look at transit service and how we can service that rather than these giant projects that don't work. They don't go anywhere. And here we are in Calgary. We've seen the same thing in Ottawa. Theirs is a disaster. Edmonton's is a disaster. And those are the other things too, though. If you're going to do these mega projects, get the private market in on it more, get the government out as much as possible. But hey, guess who's behind Calgary's? SNC-Lavalin. Familiar name? Yeah, thought so. Boy, these names just keep popping up with these multi-billion-dollar projects where nothing gets done except a lot of pockets get lined and a lot of pockets get emptied, including mine. Lone Warrior saying, still no train to the airport. Yes, in Calgary, if there was common sense, the north leg of one of the train lines goes right up, right across from the airport. It's actually kind of a straight shot across flat ground. A lot of it's undeveloped. It's industrial, light industrial, and nothing out there. From Saddletown, they could run a train out there because most of the people who work at the airport, and there's thousands of them, plus people who might want to use the train to get there to fly, would use that. There's something that would make sense that would be used. So, of course, the city isn't doing it. Welcome to the realities, again, of monopoly service and peckerheads in power that really shouldn't be. Getting on, let's talk, the other big news lately is the fire in Jasper. Of course, it's still burning out that way. It sounds like they got a lot of things under control, but 30% of the town was lost. And a whole lot of I told you so's are going on. A whole lot. Here, I'm going to plug one of my own things if you like. Go to, search out Corey Morgan on YouTube. I did a lot of videos in the past just on my own time and things like that. And I did one warning about this kind of thing. I went out into the woods and showed what a logging cut block looks like. I showed what unlogged lodgepole pine stands look like, because people don't leave the house. They don't go out in the bush. I don't blame them. That's okay. I was a surveyor for 20 years. I grew up in Banff. I love the bush. I'm familiar with it. And I tell you what, it's either got to be cut or it's got to burn. Those are the only two options you have. You can keep deferring it and kicking that can down the road, but eventually the burn will come. And you won't have much control over how it's going to burn, how hot it's going to burn. And we're hearing that. Jasper was warned over and over from different authorities, from different forestry experts. Guys, you've got a disaster pending here. And they kept kicking the can down the road because, well, nobody wants that unpopular decision. Nobody wants to go to the beautiful landscape of Jasper and see a cut block. The granola munchers, so no, I despise them. I grew up around them in Banff as well. There's that little subculture that are there, and they scream and howl about everything. They would scream and howl if they heard a chainsaw off in the trees. They would scream and howl if a dozer was out there knocking those bush down, making a fire break next to the town. Too damn bad. Those guys don't pay any bloody taxes anyways. Ignore them. Get over it. One of the experiments I remember as a kid in Banff in the 80s, because again, the granolas got all worked up because they found out that we spray around Banff every spring for mosquitoes, all the wet spots, the marshes, the swamps. They sprayed them. Oh my God, this is terrible. You're poisoning everything. It's awful. So you know what Parks Canada did? One year they didn't spray. If you go to the mountains outside of the areas where they spray, you'll discover just how many black flies, horse flies, and mosquitoes there are out there. There's billions of them. The town was just swarmed. It shut those bloody granola people up for a year or two at least. And it certainly said the residents aren't going to put up with that crap anymore. Either we need some common sense. It's not just national parks, guys. We've got towns, communities in the boreal forest across the entire country. And a lot of them are tinderboxes right now. And we need to take care of that. Or there's going to be more of these. We're seeing more and more. Before I get to Sean to talk about some things, I've got him in as well. Just to dance on a grave. I think this was one of Sean's stories anyways. But yes, Chorus Entertainment. Speaking of companies that won't evolve, companies that won't change with the times. They're the ones who run global news and a lot of the radio stations and things like that. They're going broke. Their shares are down to 10 cents a share now. They're a penny stock. They used to be, 20 or 30 bucks, I think 10 or 15 years ago. They're in the toilet. They're laying off people in the thousands, news hosts and everything else. Well, what are they keeping? Oh, DEI hires. Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They figure if we just go woke hard enough, we will defy economic reality and be able to pay our bills. No, they're just driving viewers away. But they still have a traffic helicopter. That's important, right? Yeah, because having somebody come on every 10 minutes with a static-filled report on what's happening in one segment of the city is much more important than, maybe just picking up your phone and checking Google. But yeah, change with the times. You know the problem? They're probably going to get bailed out. That's what they're waiting for. That's what's going to happen. Kiss Trudeau's white little butt there and say, hey, please, you got to save us. We're too important to fail. And he'll cut another check so these guys can hang in there, do more DEI hires, and continue to make broadcasts that nobody wants to watch or listen to. Welcome to a monopoly again. It's not a monopoly in media, but it's a monopoly on the government picking and choosing who they're going to give the money to. And those are the people that give you the information. So thank you guys for getting past that and tuning in with us. We're not getting handouts. Don't worry, Trudeau's not in a hurry to give us any, and we aren't asking for them. All right, enough ranting, pissing, moaning, and raving. Let's get on to Sean Polzer, our business and energy expert. You've been busy this week. Sean, how's it going?
It's going really good. We've been having a great week.
Well, good.
Chasing down these stories like the chorus that you just mentioned.
Yes. Well, that was a beauty. Again, I mean, when you're struggling, you're hurting, you're in a business, I mean, you got to cut, you got to rethink how you're doing things. They just can't change their mindset.
Well, we've got an insider in there, and they've been kind of feeding us these things because, the morale is just so awful. It's terrible. It reminds me a lot of what it was like at the Calgary Herald years ago. So I have a little bit of a sympathetic heart.
Well, I mean, you do feel for people. I mean, there's talented people there. There's good people at all these organizations. There are good journalists, even though we beat up on them all the time. There's a lot of fantastic ones. And they're people like the rest of us. They want to pay their bills and have their jobs. And when you've got the axe hanging over your head, it's pretty stressful.
Well, and we're a bit of a fraternity as well.
Yeah.
Even though we're competitors, we're mostly always friends when we show up on the news sites and at the pressers and the kind of things that I went to all week this week.
Well, and that's what gets frustrating, though. Then these jobs could be saved maybe if they could just look at these organizations and restructure them in a pragmatic way rather than just continuing down kind of a road of foolishness.
Or give people what they want.
There's a thought, isn't it?
Kind of like what we do.
Yes.
You always have to write for your readers. That's the first rule that you learn in, creative writing 101.
Yeah.
Who's your audience?
And that's it. I mean, the viewership is collapsing, and they got to figure out how the hell to retain it.
Read the tea leaves. It's
Well, what else you got going for us?
Well, we've got some interesting stories. So yesterday we had a $1 billion deal with Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corp. So this is one of Premier Danielle Smith's pet causes, and it's a little bit controversial among Western Standard readers that somehow think that it's a handout to the natives, but actually, in fact, it is. It's a good deal all the way around. It's a good deal for TransCanada because they have to sell off assets to get debt. Nova is an old established, pilot plant. It used to be the Alberta Trunk Line Network. It's been in the ground since about 1953. Pays steady stream of revenue and dividends. And, just dollars. And by allowing these native groups, so native groups don't have access to the funding that companies like TransCanada do. And this isn't like a loan, it's a loan guarantee, right? So they go out and they get their own loan with TD Securities, CIBC, the big brokers and that, who are more than willing to step up and finance it, given that they've got the backing. And the dividends that are going to be paid off over the generations are going to be immense. Number one, it's going to... I know we quibble about how we've treated, our Indigenous populations over the last 5 years, but it does right a historical wrong. Gives them a revenue stream, provides job opportunities and education, opportunities to improve their communities, and it makes them more equal partners in our society. And I think in the long run, it's going to benefit all of us.
Well, and another aspect, though they don't trumpet it, but there's some truth to what is an incentive for the company to partner like this is giving an interest to the First Nations groups in the industry will help blunt the protests, the opponents. I mean, the Greenpeace, the tree huggers, the nutcases are still going to protest it, but now they're going to have the First Nations bands getting up saying, you want us to stop our pipeline? That's not going to happen.
Exactly. And Stephen Jabot has already said that, they're going to try and block, conventional oil and gas developments on anything except native land. Right. So now this is almost like an ace in the hole. TransCanada could have sold this to anybody. They could have sold it to the hedge funds in New York, but they didn't. So it's going to local communities here in Alberta. So there's an export line that goes through southern BC and Saskatchewan. And so it's the federal government. We are so far ahead of the federal government on reconciliation. Yeah. They hand out T-shirts and orange shirts, and Trudeau goes surfing on, Day of Reconciliation and a holiday, right? And here in Alberta, we are actually making meaningful steps and contributions to actually addressing some of these inequities.
Partnerships have a better chance of lasting than a check.
Always.
You give a check out, it gets spent, it disappears, and then you're back to where you were. A partnership, you're together, you're working on something. Theoretically, it should last longer and hopefully build a better relationship.
Well, somebody asked me once, said, what's the definition of the perfect business deal? You know what it is?
No.
It's an alignment of interest, Corey.
Ah, yes. Fair enough.
You know, where
As long as you've got the common interest, you're going.
Win-win. That's our business culture here in Canada. And so, yeah, no, I was quite pleased with this one.
Right on.
Let's see, we got another one that I'm just writing. It's not up on the website yet, but so Fortis is handing out $10,000 incentives for it's a combination heat pump and high efficiency furnace, depending on where you live in BC and what the temperatures are, because the heat pumps don't work so well, you know, up in Williams Lake as they do down in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
And the greenies are incensed.
They're opposed to heat pumps now? I thought that was the new big good thing.
No, they love the heat pumps.
Oh.
They're just opposed to the high efficiency natural gas furnaces.
Oh, of course.
So now they're accusing the Abbey government of maintaining the addiction to fossil fuels, even though the combination of a heat pump and a high efficiency furnace results in about 100% efficiency.
I'm sure they'll get into their oil belching vans and get onto that diesel powered ferry and head to Victoria to protest with their polyester clothes outside of the
And their critical mineral EVs.
I love it when they eat their own, though.
Yep. And finally, one more. Trans Mountain is getting a new CEO. She's stepping up into the chairman's chair, the chairman who oversaw the $25 billion in overruns, who also happens to be a member of the Order of Canada, is stepping aside and paving way. So they will be marking their new era as actually pumping 880,000 barrels a day of oil to the coast, which is going to Japan, Korea, China, California. So it has turned out to be quite a success in that regard.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the
capital investment was a little large on it, I guess.
Yeah, and the fact that they give themselves the Order of Canada for this amazing accomplishment.
Pat yourself on the back, guys. All right. Well, thanks. We look forward to seeing those stories as they're coming, and see you actually on the pipeline a little later.
Excellent.
Right on.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, thanks. That is our Sean Polzer. Yes, things business, things energy. Hey, he writes on other stuff too. Check it out, Western Standard Online, guys. As I wrap things up, don't forget, go to healthreform.ca. It's well worth it. It's a good documentary, something to watch. Get the learning cap on. Share those things. They're important. So, thank you all for tuning in. Man, that went fast today. Tempted to expand the show, but we'd get too tired. Thank you all for tuning in. Check out the pipeline tonight. There's going to be more on there. Western Standard Online, westernstandard.news. Take out a subscription. Share this stuff. Send me updates, notes, comments. I appreciate it. And tune in next week. We'll see you all here again at the same time.